Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. We're going into Genesis chapter 31. It's another long one. And as you may recall, Jacob just was having a little bit of a dispute with his uncle slash father-in-law about the various methods of payments and how he'd be working. There was trickery and sorcery. And the good news is we get all that again in this chapter. So let's dive into the text. Genesis chapter 31 from Jacob's perspective to start with. Now he heard all the things that Laban's sons were saying. Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from that which was our father's he has built up all this wealth. Jacob also saw that Laban's manner towards him was not as it had been in the past. Then the Lord said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your fathers, where you were born, and I will be with you." Jacob had called Rachel and Leah to a field where his flock was, and said to them, "I see that your father's manner towards me is not as it has been in the past, but the God of my father has been with me. As you know, I have served your father with all my might, but your father has cheated me, changing my wages time and again. God, however, would not let him do me harm. If he said thus, 'The speckled shall be your wages,' then all flock would drop speckled young. And if he said thus, 'The streaked shall be your wages,' then all the flocks would drop streaked young. God has taken away your father's livestock and given it to me. Once, at the mating time of the flocks, I had a dream in which I saw that the he-goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, and mottled. And in the dream an angel of God said to me, 'Jacob.' 'Here,' I answered. And he said, 'Note well that all the he-goats which are mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, and mottled. For I have noted all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise and leave this land and return to your native land.' Then Rachel and Leah answered him, saying, 'Have we still a share in the inheritance of our father's house? Surely he regards us as outsiders, now that he has sold us and used up our purchase price. Truly, all the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. Now then, do just as God has told you.' Thereupon Jacob put his children and wives on camels, and he drove off all of his livestock and all the wealth he had amassed, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Meanwhile, Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. Jacob kept Laban the Aramean in the dark, not telling him that he was fleeing, and fled with all that he had. Soon he was across the Euphrates and heading towards the hill country of Gilead. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his kinsman with him and pursued him a distance of 7 days, catching up with him in the hill country of Gilead. But God appeared to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, 'Beware of attempting anything with Jacob, good or bad.' Laban overtook Jacob. Jacob had pitched his tent on the height, and Laban and his kinsmen encamped in the good hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, 'What did you mean by keeping me in the dark and carrying off my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee in secrecy and mislead me and not tell me? I would have sent you off with festive music, with timbrel and lyre. You did not even let me kiss my sons and daughters goodbye. It was a foolish thing for you to do. I have it in my power to do you harm. But the God of your fathers said to me last night, "Beware of attempting anything with Jacob, good or bad." Very well, you had to leave because you were longing for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?' Jacob answered Laban, saying, 'I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. But anyone with whom you find your gods shall not remain alive. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have taken of yours and take it.' Jacob, of course, did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, and Leah's tent, and the tents of the two maidservants, but he did not find them. Leaving Leah's tent, he entered Rachel's tent. Rachel, meanwhile, had taken the idols and placed them in the camel cushion and sat on them. And Laban rummaged through the tent without finding them, for she said to her father, "Let not my lord take it amiss, I cannot rise before you, for the period of woman is upon me." Thus he searched, but he could not find the household gods. Now Jacob became incensed, and took up his grievance with Laban. Jacob spoke up and said to Laban, "What is my crime? What is my guilt that you should pursue me? You rummaged through all my things. What have you found of all your household objects? Set it here before my kinsmen and yours, and let them decide between us two. These 20 years I have spent in your service. Your ewes and she-goats never miscarried, nor did I feast on rams from your flock. That which was torn by beasts I never brought to you. I myself made good on the loss. You extracted it of me, whatever snatched by day or snatched by night. Often scorching heat ravaged me, and frost by night, and sleep fled from my eyes. Of that 20 years I spent in your household, I served you 14 years for your two daughters, 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages time and time again. Had not the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac been with me, you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God took notice of my plight and the toil of my hands, and he gave judgment last night." Then Laban spoke up and said to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All that you see is mine. Yet what can I now do about my daughters, or the children they have borne? Come, let us make a pact, you and I, that there may be witness between you and I." Thereupon Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, "Gather stones." So they took stones and made a mound. And they partook of a meal there by the mound. Laban named it Yagar Shadutha, but Jacob named it Gal-ed. And Laban declared, "This mound is witness between you and me this day." And that is why it is called Gal-ed. And it was called Mizpah, because he said, "May the Lord watch between you and me when we are out of sight of each other. If you ill-treat my daughters, or take other wives besides my daughters, though no one else be about, remember, God himself will be a witness between you and me." And Laban said to Jacob, "Here is this mound, and here the pillar which I have set up between you and me. This mound shall be a witness, and this pillar be a witness that I am not to cross to you past this mound, and you are not to cross to me past this mound and this pillar with hostile intent. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, their ancestral deities, judge between us." And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Jacob offered up a sacrifice on the height and invited his kinsmen to partake of the meal. After the meal, they spent the night on the height. These longer chapters are more fun. So, naturally, Laban has sons and daughters and stuff like that. And since Jacob is blessed by the Lord, some of them are feeling a little bit jealous, saying, "Hey, how come this guy's getting all the good stuff?" It's only natural. And of course, Jacob hears them saying it. Because, rumors get around. I would have to say probably, person A told person B, heard it from the wife of so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. You know the way rumors get around. So this is entirely human. There's nothing supernatural here. The interesting thing is Rachel and Leah are really siding with Jacob. They're saying, "Okay, your God is telling you to do this, to get out of here. We're with you." Now, there is a tendency for women wanting to move away from their parents, and Laban does at first appear to be rather controlling. We'll get to that a little further in the narrative. The interesting thing many interesting things that we have, is Laban comes up, pursues him, and says, "Hey, why didn't you tell me you were going? I would have thrown you a going away party." Again, this is very human. This is exactly what people would do. If you eloped and ran away from your parents for whatever reason, they would have wanted to throw you some sort of going away party, unless they were lousy parents. But Laban actually does seem to be concerned about his fathers and his household, especially when a large portion of it gets up and walks away while you're out shearing the sheep. One of the curious things that happens is Rachel steals Laban's household gods. Household gods are a very distinct concept. From the ancient perspective, they were not necessarily the Lord on high, Re from Egyptian mythology, Enki, any of those really big people. Household gods, yes, you might say my people are descended from whoever. But since then, my great grandfather was a notable warrior, and it's more kind of a remembrance of your family. So you would go in front of those household gods for personal things. For the big things, you go to the big gods, your Dianas, your stuff like that. But for little things like, hey, I'm having some bad luck at work, whatever the case it is, can you make it better? That's a household god thing. They intervene on your behalf. So Rachel, stealing Laban's household gods, she's trying to keep that bit of the family with her, that power with her. And Laban is justly annoyed. That's his power representing his ancestry and indeed his power. So his daughter walking off with it is a really big blow to him. He's going to have to replace them. He's going to have to do all sorts of things. This is not a convenient thing. We like to think of idols as kind of being manufactured one by one, but you need the likeness of that person. It was carved many years ago to represent your great-great-granddaddy Polly. Don't know. Whatever name you want to put in there. And without that likeness, you've essentially lost that god. Now, Jacob immediately declares, whoever in here has taken anything of yours will be put to death. Rachel just sits on them and says, sorry, got my period. Interesting way to get out of a death sentence, if you ask me. But there's no real comeuppance. Rachel gets away. Laban buggers off and does his own thing. And Jacob actually gets to give Laban a little bit of his own back, getting pissed off and saying, what is my crime? You went through all my stuff. What the hell's wrong with you? Then they swear an oath. Now, as I've been saying constantly, sacrifice is a meal. And right here it specifically says, Jacob offered up a sacrifice and invited his kinsmen to partake of the meal. His kinsmen, like his family. Laban's brothers, Laban's children, all those things. This is openly acknowledging the meal part of a sacrifice. And Laban also looks out for his daughters. He says, I gave you Leah, I gave you Rachel. Again, I have a Rachel block in my head. But he's saying, I gave you those wives, you take care of them, don't you be marrying anybody else. He knows Jacob has gotten around with the servants and the concubines and all that sort of thing. So again, Laban, who is originally being told is cheating Jacob out of his wages and all these sort of things, he turns out actually really to be looking after his family. So you got this good guy, bad guy syndrome, kind of. I'm not going to say Laban was a good person. He's very inconsistent, but I would say Jacob is pissed off at the way that he's been treated. And there's also this very distinct thing where they set a boundary towards him. They say, you cannot pass this point with hostile intent. Okay, that's called a peace treaty. You don't sign a peace treaty between you and, your next door neighbor, you and your cousin, you and whoever. You set a peace treaty between nations. And we just started getting Laban being named of the Ammonites. And Jacob is obviously being set up to be of the Israelites, to show there's a peace treaty and that neither side should go by this pillar at Gilead. They even have different names for it, but they mean the same thing. One final thing to note is that Jacob is swearing by his father at this point, even though he's dedicated to the God, and even Laban realizes this is the God of your ancestors. He swears by the fear of his father Isaac. Now, fear, unfortunately, does not translate. It's one of those words that's been lost over the years. It's pahad. We translate it as fear, like it could be it's not, well, Shem would be in the name of, so the fear of, this is just the best they can do. I don't usually point out these things, but this one I found particularly interesting because the fear of, you don't swear by the fear of somebody except God. And Jacob, again, is kind of trying to pull something that Laban will be familiar with. Yes, I swear by Isaac. And Laban is like, no, swear by your God, the God of your grandfather, your God of your father, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I swear by my father. But without knowing what that word means, sadly, we will never know. That is Genesis chapter 31. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. Every like helps us out with the algorithm. If you have a couple dollars to spare, if you go down the comments, there'll be a link to the merchandise, which are books. I'm an author. I love this sort of stuff. And the ebooks are 99 cents, less than a cup of coffee at any store. And the paperbacks are under $10 with shipping. So less than a week's worth of coffee, and you can have one of my books on your shelf. And hopefully enjoy it too. But no matter what, we hope you enjoyed this reading and this interpretation. We thank you very much, and we hope you have a fantastic day.